Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Don't Cheat on a Med Student. This is a story that happened over the span of a few years. When I first started med school, I had a girlfriend who was decently attractive. Not 10 out of 10, but definitely a solid 7/10. Unfortunately, she thought of herself as a 10 out of 10 and acted like one too. As med school wore on, I started spending more time studying and less time caring for myself. As she was a 10 out of 10 and thus had no business doing anything beneath her, I was the only person who was doing the cleaning, cooking, and paying for the apartment we shared. This took up even more of my time as I entered my internship. Sometimes I'd come back to a dirty apartment that I'd have to clean up after a long shift, and I only had less time to take care of myself as a result, so my appearance suffered. I got fatter and some days I'd have to rush out the door without shaving because I'd only gotten 2 hours of sleep after cleaning and cooking. She'd never help and she was verbally, and sometimes physically, abusive. I stayed with her because I was deeply in love with her. About half a year into my internship, I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me with some art student she said was there for her and made her feel special and needed. I told her to get out of my apartment, and she was all too happy to do so. Fast forward a few years and she's in a master's program in Europe and starts talking to me again. I'm on the cusp of finishing my residency and about to start earning the big bucks people think doctors earn. She asks me for another chance. I was tempted to go for it until she started verbally abusing me again over our FaceTime, Skype sessions. I hatched a plot. I told her she'd have to quit her master's program and come to the States within 3 months. She was graduating in 6. She was reticent to do so, but I told her that if she wanted me back she needed to give me a show of good faith. I guess she figured she'd hamstring me by trapping me with marriage because she agreed. The day before she was due to fly out to the US, I told her I was lying. I blocked her on all my accounts and never spoke to her again. From what I understand, she's now surfing couches getting by on begging for charity from what few friends she made in Europe, and sometimes ducking some dude twice her age so he'd throw money at her. The next one is titled, Don't Cheat on Your Taxes and Then Try to Start Shit with Me. Sometimes the easiest way to deal with an idiot is to get accountants and the government involved. It all started out normally enough. Through some acquaintances, Myso and I met a couple that had just recently moved close to where we were living. We attended their housewarming and spent a few other nights hanging out. It'd really be nothing to write home about if Myso hadn't come to me asking me why the guy in this other couple messaged him letting him know that his girlfriend was convinced that I was trying to steal her boyfriend. If that sentence left you confused, I was too. The girlfriend didn't say a word to me, but spun some tale to her boyfriend, who also didn't say anything to me, but started messaging Myso this nonsense. The boyfriend. Unattractive doesn't describe him, but it starts to come close. If he was the last man on earth, I'd become very familiar with my right hand. As you might imagine, it's hard to definitely prove that you didn't do something, and it wasn't just flirting that I apparently engaged in according to them. I was apparently running my mouth about all sorts of stuff and causing issues for them. I apparently told nameless others that he was cheating on her and that she was cheating on him and that she was only in it for the money, and on and on. I'm saying nameless because they were never produced. Because it never happened. I'm convinced that it was something she made up. It became a they said, she said with Myso in the middle. I honestly didn't do any of the crap that I got accused of. It was all catching me totally off guard. I told them to get off and broke all ties. 2 months later, I get a message asking me why I was sending snail mail letters to the boyfriend's mother, implying that the girlfriend was a stripper and an idiot. I didn't know the mother or the address and thought that the girlfriend was a drama queen, but not a streetwalker. This time I'd really had enough. I didn't want them and their drama making regular reappearances in my life. A conversation that I'd overheard between the boyfriend and another guy popped into my head while I was seeing red. The boyfriend owned his own company and had been bragging about how he didn't pay his taxes, and neither did his company. I know my way around the internet a little bit, so I started researching him and his company. I took screenshots of what I found, which included 2 different instances of him confessing to the tax evasions on social media sites. I read far too many comment threads and posts of his and discovered his presence on some eye-raising sites in the process. I took what I had and both mailed hard copies to a few local IRS criminal investigator agents as well as emailed it to them. After I was done looking up the boyfriend and his companies, I started looking up the information of people in the local IRS office who would be tasked with investigating him. I corresponded with one of the IRS agents briefly, and then there was a silent pause in which I'd considered it all going nowhere. And then I heard it through the grapevine. IRS agents had shown up at his home. They had investigated him and his company. Together he owed something close to $2 million in back taxes. It had been years since he'd paid both. He ended up having to downsize his lifestyle a bit to start making the payments. I know he'd started hiding some of his assets by putting them in her name, so I know that the girlfriend got dragged into the investigation too. I think that it all freaked his girlfriend out and stressed their relationship because she ended up leaving him shortly after it all started. I still honestly don't understand what the point of all of the accusations was. My so doesn't have any insights either. I know I probably should have directed more of my efforts towards the girlfriend, but he was the one who unknowingly and unintentionally gave me some nice ammunition to extract some revenge against the both of them. He's now working to pay what he owes and she's now living at home and working in retail. They don't talk. I haven't heard a peep from either one of them for the last almost 2 years, so I'm satisfied with how things ended. They don't know that it was me who gave the IRS much of what they needed. The next one is titled, Take Advantage of Hundreds of People. Have fun figuring out where that smell is coming from. So, a few years back my brother-in-law, Bill, young guy in his early 30s, was diagnosed with cancer. Our family was pretty close, and everyone took it fairly hard. At the time I also happened to be looking for a new place to live. Well, my Bill and sister have a few rental properties and were looking at buying another one. They asked if I would be willing to rent it if they did. Being a single female in my early 20s, I stressed to them I probably couldn't afford it, but if it was in my price range of course I would, but I also asked them if they should really be focusing on that right now. Maybe you should take care of Bill's cancer and worry about your real estate when he's better. Anyways, you can't tell them what to do at all, and they bought a house anyways. Well, they told me I could rent the basement suite for less than my max price because they know I'll take care of it. I agree and we go about things. Well, as I'm moving in they bring me a lease contract to sign, but the rent is over $200 more than what I had told them my max price was. I questioned them about it with my crap half moved in, naturally, and they kind of upset me by saying things like, oh we thought it would be okay, and I guess we forgot to factor in A, B and C. Okay, I think to myself, but arguing with your Bill that has cancer is extremely difficult, so I reluctantly sign and accept my lack of social life due to my inflated rent. Fast forward to last year, my bill is getting significantly worse and given under 3 months to live. I made the trip to the hospital 1.5 hours away several times, as much as I could afford, and often caught rides up there as well, and he looked bad. As in, I didn't think he'd make it another month bad. In Canada, where we live, healthcare only does so much, and basically told him there was nothing left they could do for him. Well, I did some research and found a specialized cancer treatment center in the States that gave him a shot at beating it. I asked my sister to make a few calls, knowing more than I did about his specific situation, and see if they will take him. She told me they would, but it was far too expensive. I asked how much and she said, about $75,000. I immediately got together with friends and family about starting to raise some money. I had also found out they didn't have life insurance with 2 small children and they would lose everything when Bill died. Essentially they were right ducked. Now, I'm not the type of person to hold events, or generally just be social at all. I actually have mild social anxiety and dropped out of college because of it, but I somehow managed to rally together the entire community. A friend started them a GoFundMe page and gave my sister control. My sister also started a second one on YouCaring. I found a place that would give us 200 seats, free, in a bar for a fundraiser in which we could sell ticket to. Unfortunately it was around Christmas time and the only date they had available was a last-minute cancellation, about a week and a half away. Now I don't know if any of you have thrown any type of event, but that's not enough time to organize crap like that. Somehow, and don't ask me how because it was such a blur and I don't think I slept at all, I managed to organize hundreds of people. Find a band, sell all of our tickets, collect auction donations, create games, raffles, etc. to bring in more money. Get several large corporations to donate money, time, advertising. find decorations, create a slideshow, and get a ton of personal donations, over $5,000, to be presented to the family because they were going through a tough time, all while working a full-time job. While planning, I became extremely concerned with the legalities and expressed that in depth to my team. All auction items must be watched at all times, all money must be tracked, all paperwork copied and account for, etc. I also told my sister to not worry about a thing, just worry about taking care of Bill. While she not only helped by completely forgetting to do everything she insisted on doing, but talking down to me and ignoring all of the important things I was trying to express, she was actually a huge butthole the entire time. I tried to shake it off, assuming she was just stressed. A few days before the fundraiser, I tried to get the treatment center info from my sister for my speech, but she kept blowing me off, so I called the center myself. The totals that my sister were asking were completely different than what the girl on the phone told me. At the end of the conversation, the girl says, "So you're Bill's sister? That's so weird. His wife called the other day and didn't seem nearly as interested in the payment options as you are." Around the same time, I noticed my sister has changed to fundraising goals from $70,000 to $175,000. I was far too busy to give it much thought at this point though. So the day of the fundraiser, my sister walks in and I say, genuinely pleased to see her, "Oh awesome. You made it. Have you decided if you want to be involved at all?" She scowls and says, "I don't even want to ducking be here." I'm a pretty ballsy person, and any other day I would have promptly punched her in the face and walked out, but this was for my Bill. So I smiled and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Why don't you have a seat, my dad, and just relax, put all your food and drink on my bill and I'll take care of it. We've got you a ride home if you want a drink, and I'll take care of everything else for you. I love ya, sis." As MC, host and the main organizer of everything, I was running around like a chicken, either my head cut off the whole night. The only times I saw my sister was sitting on other guys' laps, ching about her husband, bidding on auction items, how ducking inappropriate, or telling her friends I'm an idiot. She also was a tch to my friends, and had I known that at the time I would have called it off right then and there. You do not duck with my friends who have supported not only me, but you through this. About halfway through the event, one of my team had approached me telling me a gift card had gone missing. Duck. That's all on me. I quickly rallied everyone to help, but my sister had quickly come over and told everyone it was taken care of. I forgot about it until my friend that donated the gift certificate showed up and asked about it. I had no answer, and sister was effectively evading me all night. The next day, since the fundraiser ended up running until after 2 a.m., I called around to everyone except my sister, looking for the gift card. I put about 9 people's stories together to figure out what happened. My sister stole the ducking gift card. For herself. From her dying husband's fundraiser. Then she blamed everything on me and made a bunch of wild, false accusations. Basically, I got numerous phone calls, texts, emails and Facebook messages, to the point I had to shut my phone off and deactivate my Facebook, telling me what an awful person I am, and how could I steal something from Bill's fundraiser and blame it on my poor sister. What? That's good for my depression and anxiety. So I called my mum, bawling, telling her I wanted to die and I don't understand. She yelled at me and told me to apologize to my sister. Duck that. I didn't speak to anyone in my family for over 9 months. I had concrete evidence proving she did it. I could have got her charged. I spent my entire vacation fund on them and didn't even get a ducking thank you. My theory, that I pieced together a few weeks after, is that my sister expected Bill to die before we could raise the money to send him for treatment. Leaving her with a nice little chunk of money to take care of her stupidly expensive lifestyle, 3 very expensive vehicles, 4 houses, property on a lake, a holiday trailer, quad, boat, etc. Well crap, I don't do anything half-assed. Within a few days we had raised half the money. By the end, he had enough to go, before she changed the total. Out of the $70,000 or so raised, I single-handedly raised over $50,000. Also, who leaves their dying husband as home to look after their 2 small children under 5 to go to Mexico? A week after the fundraiser, I decide to let herself shoot herself in the foot and just move out of the house they owned. This happened to coincide with their cross-Canada trip, and they tried to sue me. They had no grounds to do so, and I actually ended up with $50 from them, but now I'm getting a little revenge. I couldn't bring myself to tell the entire world what they did, though I easily could have, but I did decide to duck with them. While I lived in the rental, I did a bunch of work on it for them for free, so there was plenty of extra paint, drywall, etc. around. I looked up the most common and troubling pests in our area and how to attract them. Then I went shopping. The list included fish heads, shrimp, pest attractants, clearance meat, etc. I left the place immaculate. Except for the rotting food in the walls. Yup. I punched a hole in the wall, filled it up in several places, drywalled, mudded, tapped and painted over it. I hear the place is unrentable now, and going through renovations. The next one is titled, "If I can screw someone over to get ahead I will." I worked security for 2 years with a company. Before that I had worked a year at another security company, so I can say with confidence the general attitude is that we're in this together being contractors. So security officers stick together. Maybe not a thin blue, tan line like police, but we definitely looked after each other. One coworker at a site I stayed at for about a year wasn't like that though. She straight up told everybody that her job was to man the computer and interact with the people coming and going from the guard shack. She didn't even do those 2 tasks particularly well, since there were numerous complaints about her attitude with guests, and another coworker who turned into a good friend of mine was always having to correct her work. She refused to make small talk as well, which might have suited the customer's security guy fine, but kinda chafed with us other guards. Our site supervisors had to twist her arm to get her to accept overtime or even go out on patrol, and any time there was a lull she was on her phone, flagrantly breaking the rules in front of the cameras. She had even, allegedly, but I wouldn't put it past her, admitted to my friend that if she ever had the chance to screw someone else to make herself look good she would. She was in good with the upper management of our company, however, so she got away with being a really shitty desk clerk. One of our myriad duties as security officers at that site was to ensure a plethora of keys were properly controlled and accounted for. This mostly meant making sure people signed them out properly and filling out a spreadsheet at the start of each shift. Well, one evening I'm pulling a 12-hour shift, so I'm there in the middle of second shift, which my friend worked the desk. For whatever reason he was going through the key box, when lo and behold a key was missing. Looking through the log there wasn't a concrete entry for it, but we had suspicion on one entry early in first shift. So it likely had been out since that morning. Well, coworker 1 stays till an hour into second shift, so she generally got a few reports done before she left. As it turned out she had listed said key as being in the key box when she checked. Once this was realized both coworker 2 and I had crap eating, Cheshire cat grins on our faces. Of course we had to make it look official, so since I was going to be taking over the desk when coworker 2 left it would be down to me. I'm not much of an actor, but I really nailed the surprised concern with my third shift partner as I discovered the key was missing, checked the logs, and then checked coworker 1's sheet. Of course a missing key required an incident report, and I did not hold back. I attached a copy of the log sheet and the key report, which had coworker 1's initials and the time she filled out the report. I also had to inform first shift about the report in turnover, but fortunately coworker 1 came in an hour after first shift started. That incident report was the last straw, and last I heard about it they were going to replace coworker 1, but I left that post about 2 months later and was fired just last week for unrelated reasons. I think I earned the slight fear of a few of the other guards thanks to that. And to head off such comments, I'm not a blue falcon. Were it anyone else I would have let the client contact do the legwork on investigating, and I'm sure it would have called for a reprimand. But since she had a history of screwing up paperwork I think it was just the final nail in the coffin. I also am not normally that vicious, but by that point I was ducking done with that site for several other reasons, so that was me getting some anger out. But boy did it feel good. The next one is titled, "An Unusual Method for an Unusual Situation." About 15 years ago, I had a buddy with whom I liked to go exploring. Abandoned buildings, woods, bridges, construction sites, you name it. We didn't go damage or steal stuff, just looked around. In my neighborhood, there was a long, front to back, narrow, facing the street, property, sloping steadily upward from the street. A new buyer uprooted 5 or 6 1960s Ramblers from their foundations, moved them in and stood them on stilts, sort of, expecting to build foundations beneath. Some vandals wrecked the lower ones, they were hauled away, and the one at the far top back was left. The property was sold. The houses had been placed on big wooden platforms, held up by several crosshatched stacks of railroad ties. We had our eyes on exploring the houses, decided to leave the place alone for a while after the vandals hit, then snuck in to check out the one remaining house. The wooden deck stuck out from under it only on the back and the left side. At the back left corner, it was about 5 feet off the ground. The stairwell in the middle opened to an 8-foot drop. Open the front door, and it was more like 10 feet. Nice old 1960s home, not much of note but nice to go through, especially considering the weird way it was stood. There were no trespassing signs. We obeyed those. Where I live, if you're caught in some such place and there are no signs, all the police can really do is ask you to leave. Next door, out by the street, was a tiny house that always had TVs flickering in all the windows, day or night. A few months go by, and my friend found himself homeless. I had nowhere for him to crash, but I stored his stuff for him. He decided he'd quietly move into that abandoned house. Arrive late, leave early, stay quiet, and he assumed it'd be fine. He borrowed some old camping gear I had. Took the closet doors off their tracks and used them to cover the windows, removed the glass bowl from the ceiling light and hung the camp lantern from it on a bungee cord. And thus, all was well, for a month or two, until someone, had to be the little house next door, neighbors behind couldn't see and neighbor on other side was never home, spotted him and called the police. They arrived, asked him to vacate, helped him move his stuff down to the ground, and said he could return the next night to get it. When we came back, we found most of his stuff gone, and what wasn't gone had been smashed to pieces. The grass up there was very tall and very lush, so you'd really have to know something was there. We could faintly see what looked like a path blazed up to the area from the little house. He was livid. The police had every right to trespass him, but this was a dick move by the nearby neighbors. We decided to have some fun, and dug into my stash of fireworks. I'm still surprised that everything worked exactly as we'd intended, but it did go off without a hitch. One firework didn't go off, but that's not much. We snuck in from the rear, through another yard, set everything up, left the same way, went around the block, hid across the street and waited. First to go were some piccolo peats, a shrill whistle followed by a bang. Lights went on in the little house. Next, a string of firecrackers. Then, some mortar shells. No firing tube, so they just leapt about 8 feet off the deck and exploded. The grass was green at that time of year, no fire danger. 3 people came out of the little house, just in time to see the mortar shells. Of course, one's first thought isn't elaborate time delay firing. When they saw a window on the left side glowing, we were pretty sure they believed the squatter was back and shooting fireworks. They got flashlights and trudged up the hill. We had placed cigarettes on the fuses, cut to various lengths. They kept burning until they reached the fuses. We'd come up with this on the former 4th of July to throw together a short show. We watched them haul themselves onto the deck at back left, saw their lights appear in the picture window at far right as they entered the dining room behind, and watched the lights appear in the front bedrooms. The window on the side, a frosted one, was a bathroom. Between the toilet, just beneath the window, and the bathtub was a little wall with a towel rail, onto which we'd glued a row of candles. The glow went out, and they left the house, surely knowing that they'd just wasted time and effort going after a guy who'd arranged a bunch of stuff in order to make them do exactly that. It wasn't long after that the final blow fell. On a fence post along the back of the property, I'd placed a big, single-shot white chrysanthemum mortar with a full cigarette on it. I'd hoped they wouldn't notice it as they went in or came back out. The firing tube was white, and they didn't. It went off just as they were regrouping and lit up the house and yard for a few moments, I'd guess as bright as daylight. We were pretty sure the message of, "You've been had," was crystal clear. A week or so later, we snuck in through the back and left a 2-foot roll of firecrackers on the deck, with a full cigarette. For those who don't know, if you light a firecracker string that's been rolled, they set each other off and the result is a solid blast of noise. We'd unrolled about a foot of it, so they got about 5 seconds of machine gun firecrackers followed by a deafening "oh." At their house, about 80 feet away, it must have been a real shocker. After that, we left the matter, and the abandoned house was razed a few months later. The last one is titled, "The Rude Customer Ordered Ham, and Only Ham." I work at Potbelly Sandwiches, and whenever I get a doorknob guy or gal, I give them a crummy cut bread or less meat. This one time I had a lady order 5 sandwiches. I'm about to start making her sandwiches when the guy behind her comes up and says, "Ham." Me, "I'll be with you in a minute, sir." Doorknob, "Ham." Me, "Sir, I will be." Doorknob, "No, I just want ham." This dude proceeds to step out of line to answer his phone. Instead of trying to stop him to find out the size or type of bread, I finished the woman's order, then sent a serving of ham through the oven. When the guy finally came back 10 minutes later, cutting a bunch of people in line, he was upset to find he got just ham, like he ordered. I probably would have gotten in trouble if my manager wasn't right behind me when he ordered. Thanks for listening.